I didn't just find out my wife, Serena, was cheating. If it had just been the infidelity, the heartbreak would have been clean. Simple. The kind of raw, agonizing pain that eventually heals. No, what I found was far worse. I found out she and her boss, Victor, didn't just share a bed. They shared a joke. And that joke, that pathetic, naive, easily manipulated idiot, was me. I can still hear the sound of her laugh, sharp and utterly free, cutting through the silence of our empty living room. It wasn't a giggle of lust or happiness. It was the sound of contempt, aimed right at the man who was keeping her world running. The words themselves, they're burned into the soundtrack of my life now. They are the truest betrayal story I have. He still believes I work late, the poor bastard. That phrase, the poor bastard, that was my epitaph. That was the final, brutal twist in our 10-year saga, and the moment the man who loved her died, and someone else, something colder and more calculating, took his place. When I met Serena, we were just kids, scrambling our way through college in a haze of cheap coffee and big dreams. She was electric, ambitious, a future CEO wrapped in a nervous energy I found intoxicating. I was the steady one, the quiet analyst who saw patterns where others saw chaos. My dream was a tech startup, small, focused, and ours. We even had a name for it. But then life happened. Her corporate career started to bloom early, demanding 70-hour weeks at a huge, shiny skyscraper downtown. My startup idea felt like a risk, a distraction. She looked at me one night, exhausted but hopeful, and said, "Ethan, if I can just break through this level, we're set. Can you be the stable ground for a few years? We can always circle back to your dream." And I said yes. I gave up the coding, the midnight brainstorming, the creative fire. I took a stable, utterly overlooked analyst job at a municipal firm. It paid the mortgage, covered her dry cleaning bills, and gave her the freedom to pursue her glory. My identity quietly became her support system. My joy was her success. I remember buying her a watch when she landed her first promotion. It was too expensive, but seeing her face light up, that was my return on investment. I was proud. I was faithful. I was the rock. The slow shift began the moment Victor entered the picture. He was the VP of operations, the golden boy of the company. Charismatic, older, rich. He was everything I wasn't, and everything she was aspiring to be. First, it was just professional. Victor really respects my ideas, Ethan. He sees my potential. Then it became personal. The late-night texts about strategy sessions that always started late and ran until 1 a.m. The constant, casual mentions of Victor's yacht, Victor's connections, Victor's insight. She started changing, too. The corporate polish became a shield. She replaced her comfortable weekend jeans with designer activewear and started subtly correcting my choice of wines and my, as she later called them, hideous, faithful sweaters. The distance was palpable, yet I always rationalized it. She's stressed. She's driven. I need to be more supportive. I was trapped in the quiet heroism of my sacrifice, and she was already halfway out the door, moving toward a flashier, faster life. I genuinely believed I was contributing to a future we shared. The truth, as it always does in these real-life confession stories, arrived with a whimper, not a bang. The classic signs were there. Guarded phone calls, passwords changing, her sudden, intense focus on fitness outside of our home. But I was so deep in denial, I just dismissed them as relationship drama. The catalyst for the truth was pure, stupid, tech-related luck. A few months prior, I had bought a cheap, refurbed smart tablet for browsing recipes in the kitchen. It had since been relegated to a junk drawer after it developed a charging issue. I decided to wipe it clean before donating it. As I reset the device, it briefly synced with our shared cloud drive. And there it was, a small, corrupted video file Serena must have thought she deleted. The file header read, Victor_Q3_planning. I used my analytic skills to recover it, not out of suspicion, but out of habit. Maybe it was an important company file. I pressed play, expecting a dry presentation. What I saw was a brightly lit hotel room. Serena, wrapped in a fluffy white robe, was leaning against a leather armchair. Victor was out of frame, but his voice, deep and patronizing, was immediately recognizable. The air was thick with a lazy, post-coital intimacy that made the blood run cold in my veins. I should have stopped the video when Victor's hand appeared in the corner of the frame, reaching for Serena's shoulder. But I couldn't. I needed to see how far the dark secrets went. The affair itself was predictable. What followed wasn't. Victor, chuckling. Did you remember to send him that photo of the spreadsheets? Just to keep up appearances. Serena, rolling her eyes and sipping from a glass. Of course, the poor sap actually thinks he's contributing to my groundbreaking Q3 analysis. He spent 2 hours fixing the formatting on a deck he thought was crucial. Victor, seriously, Serena, does he still wear those hideous, faithful sweaters? The ones that look like they're waiting for Christmas morning in 1998. And then that laugh. The loud, contemptuous, soul-shattering laugh. It was the sound of my decade of dedication being tossed into a shredder. Oh God, yes, she gasped out, wiping a tear of mirth from her eye. The poor bastard thinks I'm going to miss him tonight. He's probably reorganizing his spreadsheet files and waiting for my triumphant return. It's pathetic, Vic. It's genuinely pathetic. In that moment, the heartbreak vanished. It was replaced by a wave of white-hot, analytical clarity. They hadn't just taken my wife. They had stolen my dignity and turned my love into their private punchline. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't smash the tablet. I didn't even pour myself a drink. The humiliation had acted like a short circuit, shutting down every emotional center in my brain. I carefully closed the file, transferred the damning audio segment to an encrypted flash drive, and calmly placed the tablet back in the drawer. I became the ghost of myself. When Serena came home 3 hours later, smelling faintly of expensive perfume that wasn't hers, she gave me a practiced, tired kiss. "Rough night, honey," she sighed, already halfway to the bedroom. Victor's pushing for this huge merger. We were practically living in the office. And I simply said, "I know. You deserve a good night's sleep." My voice was even, my eyes detached. She didn't notice the emptiness in my gaze. She saw the same poor sap who was always supportive. But I wasn't supportive. I was observing. I was calculating. A divorce? That was too easy for them. That allowed them to walk away with their careers intact, leaving me the broken man holding the bag. No, my revenge had to strike at the one thing they both valued above all else. Their professional status and the illusion of success they had built their affair upon. They mocked my steady, analytical mind, the very thing I sacrificed for her. Now I would use that meticulousness, that patience they laughed at, to ruin their shared, false success. Serena and Victor believed they were playing a complicated game of corporate power and clandestine meetings. But I saw the pattern. I saw the weakness. I knew Victor was reckless, and Serena was sloppy. I went to my home office. I fired up my old server. I pulled up my financial modeling software. This wasn't about filing a legal motion. This was about executing a corporate teardown. I was no longer a betrayed husband. I was an analyst, and my target was Victor's entire operation. I needed to find the dark secrets that lay beneath their polished surface. I was going to leverage every ounce of my forgotten technical skill to deliver the ultimate karma. My justice would be swift, public, and delivered where it hurt the most. Their reputations. I am not the poor bastard they laughed at. I am the architect of their downfall, and the blueprint is complete. I knew this emotional narration would be incomplete without the ultimate reckoning. I just needed to start digging. The days that followed the discovery were the strangest of my life. I was living with my cheating spouse under the same roof, sharing the same air, yet I was inhabiting a parallel reality. The poor bastard, she mocked, was now a ghost, quietly gathering his weapons. The rage wasn't loud. It was silent, cold, and razor-sharp, precisely what I needed for this kind of emotional narration. They mocked my job as a simple analyst. Steady, boring, predictable. They mocked my attention to detail. What they failed to understand was that a meticulous analyst, when pushed into a corner, becomes a master of patterns and weaknesses. Their high-flying, reckless lifestyle was full of exploitable vulnerabilities. I dedicated my nights to the hunt. My simple job had taught me how to read financial regulatory filings and cross-reference public data. I started with Victor. I knew the corporate world was built on a delicate house of cards, and Victor, with his arrogant confidence, would have left a paper trail wide enough for me to follow. I pulled his publicly available company filings, focusing on stock options, shareholder reports, and, most crucially, the expense accounts I knew Serena handled. I cross-referenced this with tiny documents I found hidden on her personal cloud. Minor receipts, vendor invoices, and casual emails she never bothered to scrub because, to her, they were just boring admin. I saw the patterns immediately. Small, consistent discrepancies. Victor wasn't outright stealing millions. He was siphoning funds through subtly inflated expense reports and manipulating the timing of stock option grants just before major announcements. A practice bordering on insider trading, or at least aggressive market manipulation disguised by complex corporate structures. It was a sophisticated shell game that required the dedicated support of an accomplice, likely someone in Serena's position. I spent weeks building my file, treating it like the most critical project of my career. Every piece of evidence was time-stamped, authenticated, and backed up across 3 different encrypted digital locations. I cleaned up Victor's messy tracks, not to protect him, but to present the case in an irrefutable, undeniable sequence. My arsenal was complete. The meticulously documented corporate fraud, the internal emails showing Victor's disregard for compliance, and the final, devastating flourish, the audio file of Serena and Victor mocking my loyalty. This wasn't just a disclosure of corporate corruption. It was the truth revealed about the rotten core of 2 people who had built their success on arrogance and dark secrets. My justice would be absolute. The confrontation, that wasn't. During this time, the emotional cost was immense. My life was a performance. Serena, blinded by her self-importance and the excitement of her affair, saw nothing. One Saturday, she suggested a dinner date. "We haven't connected in ages, honey. You've been so quiet lately." She thought I was depressed, or perhaps quietly accepting my lot as the poor sap. I accepted the date. I needed to see her face one last time before I hit the button. At the fancy downtown restaurant, paid for with her corporate card, I watched her. I watched her perfectly manicured hand lift her wine glass. I watched her practice her corporate smile on the waiter. And I saw the man I used to love, the earnest college student who dreamed with me, peeking out from behind the glossy, cruel exterior she had perfected. She started talking about Victor, of course. "He's about to land this huge deal, Ethan. It's the biggest in company history. He's going to be CEO." I simply nodded, my heart like a marble in my chest. "That sounds wonderful for him, Serena." She didn't see the double meaning. She didn't see the executioner across the table. She just saw the husband who was always too simple, too good. My inner conflict was brutal. A part of me, the old Ethan, wanted to slam my fist on the table and scream the words they used against me. I wanted to force a real-life confession and see the shame in her eyes. But the new Ethan, the one forged in humiliation, knew that shame was fleeting. Financial, professional ruin, that was permanent. That was the only thing that could truly deliver karma. I finished my dinner, excused myself early, and drove home alone. The next day was the day of Victor's high-profile corporate gala, the night of his expected promotion. It was the perfect stage for the curtain to fall. I went to bed, not sleeping, but simply waiting for the moment of 0 hour. The night of the gala arrived. The city was buzzing with corporate electricity. Serena had spent hours getting ready, floating around the apartment in a shimmering dress, excited for her big night on Victor's arm. She was going to be the arm candy of the new CEO. "Wish me luck, sweetie," she said, giving me a dismissive air kiss. "This is a huge career night for me." "Good luck, Serena," I replied, handing her the car keys. My voice was utterly neutral. This was the final act of the true betrayal story, and I was playing my role to perfection. I didn't go to the gala. I didn't even stay in the house. I drove across town to an anonymous, dimly lit 24-hour coffee shop, the kind where analysts and developers worked their late shifts. This felt fitting. They laughed at the working class. They laughed at the quiet grind. Now, that quiet grind was their destruction. I set up my laptop. The gala was just starting. I could see photos of Victor and Serena already appearing on social media, smiles frozen in false victory. The air was thick with their impending triumph. I opened the evidence file. I worked methodically, ensuring maximum instantaneous impact. The drop had to be coordinated to hit exactly when Victor was shaking the hands of his board members. First, the company's board of directors. An encrypted email containing the full, footnoted report detailing the corporate malfeasance, sent from an untraceable, offshore server. The subject line was chillingly simple: irrefutable evidence of VP misconduct and financial fraud. Second, the public firestorm. A top financial reporter known for breaking major corporate scandals received the file with a clear, concise summary and a link to the primary evidence. And finally, the pure, viral humiliation they deserved. The entire story, the Reddit cheating story revenge, was posted to a massive, anonymous relationship subreddit, complete with a clean transcript of the mocking audio and a redacted version of the financial document for context. I titled the post, "Wife mocked me with her boss. They called me the poor bastard. Nobody expected what I did next." The button was pressed. The files were sent. The truth revealed. I closed my laptop. I hadn't raised my voice, fired a gun, or even filed a single divorce document yet. But the damage was done. The mechanism of their destruction, built piece by piece, was now in motion. I didn't wait around for confirmation. I just looked out the window, watching the city lights blur, feeling nothing but a strange, terrifying calm. I was no longer the betrayed partner. I was the agent of karma. The old life was over. The new one had just begun. I was ready for the firestorm. The morning after the drop felt like a dream sequence in an emotional narration. I woke up early in our king-sized bed, the very same bed where she planned her deception and mocked my expense sheets. I was fully prepared for the explosion, but the silence was deafening. It was the calm before the nuclear winter. I made coffee, turned on the news, and there it was. Not just a story, it was the top-breaking news banner. VP of tech giant under internal investigation for alleged fraud, stock dips. The financial reporter I'd sent the documents to hadn't wasted a minute. They had clearly run enough checks on my impeccably sourced data to know it was solid. They hadn't initially mentioned Victor by name, citing sources close to the board, but the implication was clear, and the internal investigation announcement was a self-fulfilling prophecy. Then came the second layer, Reddit. The post I made, the Reddit cheating story revenge, had exploded. It was a digital wildfire. Thousands of upvotes, hundreds of comments. The transcript of the mocking audio, the humiliation of the poor bastard, struck a visceral chord. The collective internet hive mind was already connecting the dots between the anonymous VP in the financial news and the named Victor in the Reddit thread. The details about the stock manipulation and expense discrepancies were being discussed with horrifying accuracy. The digital noise was deafening, but my apartment remained silent until the key turned in the lock. Serena walked in, not with her usual corporate strut, but staggering, her makeup smeared, her shimmering gown looking cheap and ruined. She hadn't slept. She dropped her designer clutch on the hardwood floor. It didn't even register. She found me in the kitchen, sipping my coffee. She looked at me, not with the contempt she used on Victor's video, but with a sudden, dawning terror. "What did you do?" she whispered, her voice cracking. It was the first real-life confession I'd ever heard from her. I placed my mug down gently. "I finished my analysis, Serena." She didn't ask about the affair. She didn't ask about heartbreak. She didn't ask about our 10 years. She went straight to the only thing she truly cared about. Victor's on forced leave. The board is furious. The FBI might be involved. Ethan, this is a scandal. My name, my career, is collateral damage. You psychotic, jealous idiot. What did you do? The shift in her rage was telling. She wasn't angry that I knew she cheated. She was angry that I had touched her status. "I served justice," I replied, my voice steady, betraying none of the chaos inside. "You and Victor saw me as a support system, an easily fooled simpleton who would finance your life while you built your empire on lies and contempt. You were wrong." I walked to the counter and picked up 2 documents I had printed that morning. The air was heavy with the weight of my decade of sacrifice finally tipping the scales. I didn't just expose Victor's corporate fraud, Serena. I served our divorce papers. And given the evidence, including the documented affair and the financial misconduct I've uncovered, the prenup is clear. You leave with your personal assets. The house, the investment accounts, the stability you mocked me for building, that stays with me. She finally screamed. Not a cinematic cry of grief, but a panicked, high-pitched wail of pure, financial loss. She lunged forward, but I simply stepped back, detached. You don't get to mock my commitment and keep the rewards of my sacrifice, I finished. You and Victor made a colossal misjudgment, and the market corrected itself. This is your karma. Victor was formally charged 2 weeks later, not just for the stock option manipulation I uncovered, but for a host of other dark secrets that my initial file had opened the door to. The fallout was total. His name was synonymous with disgrace. Serena's connection to him, the countless hours she spent working late, and the company email trails she left, ensured her career was terminally tainted. She was offered a severance package and shown the door. The high-powered corporate world she craved had spit her out. I moved into a small, quiet apartment a few blocks from the office building where I worked. I finally quit my simple analyst job and dusted off the business plan I abandoned 10 years ago. I had the clarity, the stability, and the financial foundation to start my tech venture, all thanks to the cold, focused execution of my plan. The physical separation from Serena was clean, quick, and financially advantageous. My true betrayal story had reached its revenge conclusion. But the win was a stone in my gut. I sat in my empty, quiet apartment, the scent of fresh paint and new beginnings around me. I had achieved complete, devastating justice. I had protected my future and annihilated the people who had tried to erase my self-worth. I was respected by the attorneys, admired by the friends I finally told the truth to, and celebrated anonymously on the internet as a king of karma. And yet I felt hollow. The victory wasn't sweet. It was sterile. I mourned the man I was, the one who could love so completely, the one who saw endless possibility in Serena's eyes, the Ethan who sacrificed his dream out of pure, unselfish devotion. That man was gone, brutally murdered by her mocking laugh. The emotional narration that played in my head was no longer one of grief, but of the immense, irreplaceable cost of that loss of innocence. Revenge gave me justice, but it robbed me of my capacity for trust, leaving an emptiness that no professional success could ever fill. Weeks passed. The divorce was finalized. Serena was gone. I was sitting at my desk, organizing the digital files for my new company, when I found the encrypted flash drive I'd used to store the evidence. I paused, looking at the small device. It contained everything: the corporate filings, the email chains, the documentation of their greed. But most importantly, it contained the final, single, corrosive audio file. Serena's laugh. The sound of my humiliation. I opened the file and listened again. Victor's voice, smug and rich, asking about my sweaters. Serena's contemptuous giggle, echoing the words. He still believes I work late, the poor bastard. It was the ultimate motivator. It was the genesis of my cold, perfect revenge. It was the link to the decade I had thrown away. I sat there for a long time, the sounds cycling in my headphones, a ghostly reminder of the woman I married and the man she killed. Then I understood. Keeping it was keeping her. Keeping the pain was keeping the old wound fresh. I had proved my point. I had served justice. Now I needed to serve myself. I dragged the single audio file from the flash drive and dropped it onto my recycle bin. I held the mouse over the empty trash command. I took one last, deep breath. Click. The sound of the file vanishing was the final sound of the relationship. A single, insignificant click that erased a decade of lies. They laughed at me for being faithful, for being simple, and for being supportive. They mocked the quiet strength that allowed them to soar. But that simplicity gave me the clarity to see their dark secrets and the analytical discipline to expose them. It gave me the freedom to walk away with my dignity and future intact. I missed the man they laughed at, because that man at least still knew how to love. The new Ethan knows how to fight, how to win, and how to survive the ultimate true betrayal story. But the warmth is gone. And sometimes, in the cold light of this empty apartment, I wonder if the cost of karma was worth the price of my own heart. If you connected with the chilling justice of this emotional narration, remember to subscribe and turn on notifications. Every week, we pull back the curtain on the deepest, most devastating dark secrets from real-life confessions. Tell me in the comments, what was the hardest part of Ethan's betrayal for you?